Hi guys, my name is Roger, and I'm building a mid-engine supercar in the basement of my home. Let's take a look at what I've been working on this week. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I guess if you watched last week's video, you saw that we were having some CNC issues, and I have those solved, and we'll go over those in a few minutes. I'll let you know exactly what the problem was and how I fixed it. But let's get started showing you what I've been working on for the last couple of days and what we're going to try to accomplish in this video. Okay, so here's the car as it sits, and in the last few videos we have managed to make a roof panel out of carbon fiber and a rear hatch here out of carbon fiber, and I have them sitting roughly where they'll locate on the car. We started making a mold here for this around the side glass with the A pillar, B pillar, and the little quarter window. Ran into some fitment issues with the glass. I took the glass and had it 3D scanned, and now I have an accurate model of the glass so we can fit it in this panel and make that work correctly for us. I'll also show you some video from having that part scanned here in just a minute. But since we were having some issues with this glass and I couldn't get it to fit correctly, we moved on from this car part and we've come back here and we're trying to make the pattern or the mold for this rear valance here on the car. And that is on the CNC currently cutting, half of it is. And while it's been cutting, I've also been busy and I went ahead and cut and glued up the parts here for the top half of the mold. But this is waiting in line to go on the CNC. Just as soon as the part that's on it now finishes, I'll put this one on and start it cutting. And hopefully we can get these two halves glued together when they're both cut and start finishing this mold and getting it ready to make a part. So I took my door glass and the 3 trim pieces, the rubber pieces, down to have them 3D scanned at Digitized Designs. And this is a picture of inside of the company. It's a couple of scanners and some computers and the guy Brian who did my scanning for me in this photo. And this is a table full of their computers. There were a couple of guys sitting on the back side working on files. There were pieces and parts of everything sitting around on shelves and in the floor. They obviously scan and work on a variety of different things in here. And here is a video of Brian actually 3D scanning one of the trim panels. You can see the laser shining out on the part, measuring, and he said this scanner was accurate within 20 microns, so that is really accurate. And here on the computer screen, it's showing what he's modeling, so he's watching the screen as he's scanning the part, making sure that it picks up every surface and he doesn't miss anything. So he scans the front side and then the back side, and then once this model is all digitized in and he can see that all the surfaces are scanned in, he comes back in and deletes the things he doesn't need, like the table and the 2 spools that the part is sitting on. So here he is scanning the back side of the part, and then the computer will combine the front and the back sides together into one file. And here is a picture of that file once he has deleted the surfaces that he didn't need. And here it is zoomed in. You can see the detail of the ridges or ribs in the part itself, so the surfaces are really clean. Now they will take this file and then translate it. This is an STL file, so they'll make it into a solid file so I can import it into SolidWorks and use these surfaces, and they will be clean and accurate and everything. I can make them align and work for what I need them to. But anyway, I'm going to put their information up here on the screen. Again, this company's name is Digitized Designs. They're in Greenville, South Carolina, and they're very good people to work with. If you're local or if you need something scanned that's small enough that can be mailed to them, contact them. I'll put their phone number up here. Okay, here's the part cutting on the CNC machine, and I mentioned that I had got the CNC working correctly again. In last week's video I said that the bearings were bad on the gantry and I needed to replace those. I did replace those bearings, but that did not solve the issue. They were bad, a couple of them, but that wasn't what my issue was. I posted a video on Facebook asking some questions to a CNC user group, see if anyone had any ideas of what could possibly be wrong with my machine. And I had several good suggestions, and I just went over them one by one, checking to see if I could find the problem. And I finally did find the problem. The issue was a loose wire going to the breakout board on the Y-axis. I had turned all the contacts where the wires attached to the board and made sure they were tight, and they were all tight, but what I missed was one of the wires was not under the contact, so it was just sitting there touching it and bouncing up and down on it. It was kind of an intermittent connection, and that was what was causing my issue. And it wasn't actually losing steps, it was just losing communication with the computer and the breakout board, and that was causing my issue. Okay, the bottom half of the rear valance mold is finished. It's sitting right here in front of me on the floor. And the top half block is glued together here. You see it on the far side. And the CNC machine is cleaned off and ready to start on this next mold, the top half. So let me get that loaded up on the machine and get the program installed, and let's get it started cutting. Okay, so both halves or both parts of the rear valance have been cut on the CNC, and I am gluing those two halves together now. And you can probably tell it's upside down. That's the way it needed to sit to be level on the floor and not fall over. But I just glued this together. I have it clamped up, and we'll let it sit and dry thoroughly. You can probably see the top half of the mold, which is really the bottom, has a lot of Bondo in it, where the CNC was acting up and losing its position. It cut some places out of the mold that it shouldn't have, and I went back and patched those with Bondo and then recut it to try to save all of this wood, because that is it's about an entire sheet of MDF and quite a bit of labor to glue it up and cut it again. But when this part completely dries and I feel comfortable it's completely dry, I'll take the clamps off and we'll go ahead and we'll brush a coat of wood glue on this entire mold. Let that soak into the wood and harden, and then we'll sand that. And that gives us a good starting point to start with our putty and high build primer. But just wanted to show you this. It's coming along. It'll take a few days to get this ready to make a part on. I need to block sand it, prime it, wet sand it, and then put 6 coats of wax on it before it'll be completely ready to use. And I'll check back with you guys when I have a little more progress on this. So, give you a close-up of what this is looking like. Of course, it is rough. Some of the surfaces, these are smooth. These are ready for primer, of course. All the surfaces you don't see anything on are pretty slick and ready for primer. I have skim coated some putty in a lot of places, and then, like I said, some of the worst places got a little bit of Bondo squeegeed on them. And this should be ready to sand tomorrow. This will sand pretty easy. The only difficult part about this is it's all the tight, small areas are hard to get in and sand. It's not like the hood or the rear hatch where you could get in with a nice block and block sand it all down smooth. This is a little more difficult. But I just wanted you guys to see what this is looking like. You can kind of picture what this is. I know obviously this is the reverse image of the part, but this is where the license plate will mount. This is where the exhaust will come out over in both of these corners here, and then that aluminum mesh will go in between it and all around the exhaust. This is where the side pieces that wrap around the back of the car will mount to on both sides, and then this is the actual top deck up here. This is where the rear hatch will come down and close and have a seam mating up with that. That gives you a visual what this looks like. I'm going to go and get on the computer and show you guys what part we're making next, what it looks like, what the mold looks like. The mold's kind of complicated. I'm going to have to cut it in 4 pieces and glue it together just because the size and the shape of the part, mostly the shape, but the size a little bit. But we'll go take a look at that. I'll show you what's coming up next, and then I'll get busy cutting some wood pieces and gluing them together and getting the blank ready to put on the CNC tomorrow morning. Okay, here's our car model that we look at with our body panels on it that we've made. You can see here that I have the centerpiece that we're working on currently, and then the part here on the left rear corner, this is the mold that's coming next that we're starting to cut some pieces for. If we roll this around, look on the inside, we can see where the light here is sitting in here. I'll need to make another mold for a bucket to mount this light in that will glue to this corner panel. Alright, so let's open this part that we're going to make and take a close look at it. This is what the part looks like. It's just the corner here with the vents at the bottom and the tail light at the top. And to make this, we have to use this mold. You can see the different colors here. This is a 4-piece mold. I have to break it into 4 pieces to be able to machine it, and we'll glue it back together. We can explode this and see the 4 pieces of the mold. And this is the one that we're currently cutting now, the blue one. And you can kind of see this is the way that it's being cut. It's laying down flat on the table, so we're able to machine it. And then we put these 4 pieces back together. Once they're glued all together, this is what our mold will look like to make the part. And then we go back to our car model and take a look at it with a corner here, and then you can see the part where it mounts and how it glues to our centerpiece to give it a nice area to mount to. Alright, I have this block glued together and ready to put on the CNC to cut this piece of the next mold. This is one of 4 pieces. It's kind of small, but when all 4 of these get put together, it'll be a little larger. It's probably 3 foot by 3 foot, maybe 1.5 foot deep. But here's a small one. The G-code program is written and ready to go. It is late Friday night, so tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, I will load this on the CNC and we will start cutting. I don't expect this one to take very long. Hopefully it will finish in one day. Just do the rough cut and then the final pass, cleanup pass. And if it finishes, then we can pull it off and get another file ready or another block of wood ready and put it on the machine to start cutting maybe Sunday or Monday morning. But we'll see how it goes. And also still sanding and puttying on this mold. I have I'm gonna say maybe 75% of it sanded for a second time. I need to sand the 2 edges here. I haven't touched those, the far one. Everything else has been sanded over completely. I put one more coat of putty and just the rough spots. There's a couple of spots down here. You can see a few little spots across this rib, and then there was some parts down in here where I can't get to sand very easy that I had to putty in, and I'll go back over that. But hopefully this is about, I don't know, maybe an hour or 2 left of sanding on this, and I can hit it with the first coat of high build primer. That'll be a pretty thick coat, and it fills in a lot of the little tiny voids. And then we'll see where we stand, because once you prime it, you can see where the bad parts are really easily. So hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be priming this tomorrow, and this mold will look like it's complete and will be decent in shape. We'll see how it looks when it's primed, but should be 90% of the way there. Do a little puttying in the bad spots, hit it with a final coat of primer, and then start wet sanding. The wet sanding on this may be difficult because of all the little nooks and crannies and corners, but we'll see how it goes. Also need to check, make sure I have enough 600 grit sandpaper and 800 grit to wet sand this. It's been a while since I sanded a mold, so I could be out, but I'm going tomorrow to where I could buy some more. But I will check tonight, get the sandpaper if needed, because I will definitely need it here in just a couple of days. Alright, here's the rear valance. I finished all of my sanding yesterday. Got the first coat of primer on this. I put a pretty heavy coat of high build primer. Once you do that, that shows all of your blemishes. Now I have sanded in a few spots, just making sure that the primer was dry enough to sand today and get ready. But once this primer is on here, you see all of your little blemishes. Some little divots here, up in here. So you will take and block sand all of that out as much as possible, and what won't block sand out, then we'll start coming back in with putty and filling in these divots and bad spots. There's a couple of little cracks. Oh, here's a good one that needs to have some putty in them, and all the little tiny divots. And there's some places in the corners it was really hard to get to in sand. It's still rough. But we'll sand all this out. We'll block sand this. We'll fill it in with putty and get it ready. My goal is to finish this today and get the second coat of primer on it. Once that second coat of primer is on, it should be pretty doggone smooth, and then we'll just come back and wet sand it to perfection to get it ready to make a part on. And that'll be a few hour process. It takes a while to work all this down and get it ready for the second coat of primer. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this and see how far we get today. Well, here's the mold. I have sanded on it all day and put the final coat of high build primer on it. It looks pretty good. Just needs to be wet sanded now. Give you a close-up. Now you'll see some blemishes here. This is just the perimeter of the mold. There's some divots and stuff, but the actual part itself sits in the recess area, so I didn't concern myself too much about this. It's not important. There are some little tiny places you'll see, but they are so minor. They should wet sand out with no problem. Also it's very windy outside today. I had a leaf blow up and land on it, so there's a little rough spot here where the leaf landed because it was still wet, but that should also wet sand out. Don't see anything that doesn't look good. It's very slick, and we will wet sand with a block as much as we can because all these surfaces were very visible, and they need to be as flat as possible. So we'll block sand all of that out, wet sand with a block, however you want to call it, and should make a nice part. Now some of these edges here aren't super pretty, but again, there'll be another part that glues to this edge and then fill in the gap with epoxy or Bondo or something, so you'll never see those spots. This is a very highly visible area, so we'll be sure to sand that and this flat area really well. And this is the most visible area of this part. This is the rear of the car, and this is the top of the car up to where the rear hatch mates up to it. So all of that needs to be super smooth, and I laid the primer to it, and it is very slick. So it should wet sand out very nicely. I know the light is not great here, but maybe you can see how slick that is. It looks really nice. So I'm happy with this. I need to let it dry until tomorrow so it is completely dry, and then we'll start wet sanding. I have sandpaper here at home, so I didn't buy any more this weekend. I should be good to go. But this part looks good. A couple days wet sanding, and then 6 coats of wax, and it'll be ready to make a part on. And I am excited to make this part and see how it turns out. Alright guys, well, I have finished this mold. It has all 6 coats of wax on it. It is ready to use to make a part. So Friday afternoon I will spray this with a gel coat, and then Saturday morning we'll take it up and make a part on it and see how it turns out. It looks like it should be a fairly easy part to make, other than maybe getting the carbon fiber to lay down in all the little surfaces. It's quite complex shape, but it is small and should be easy to get the resin to flow to everywhere that it needs to. But mold is shiny. I don't think you can see it in the camera here, but it is really slick and looks like a pretty nice mold. We should get a good part off of this. But if all goes well, we'll have another body part for the car in the next video, and possibly even a second one if things go really well, but we'll see how that goes. And I guess that's going to be about it for this week's video, and I'll see you guys again in a few weeks.